Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome back to the podcast or welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk about if you're not closing your sales calls and you want to know why so that people actually join your offer. So, I'm going to talk about a wide range of topics on what could be happening on your sales calls, but make sure to listen to my episode where I break down my sales call process. Fundamentally, the reason why a lot of sales calls don't close is because you're using the wrong process. You may not have a process at all. You might just be winging it the way that I used to before I developed my process. And like a lot of my clients, before they join us inside of Five Figure Freedom, they're kind of free falling it and they don't have a process. They've never were taught sales. Versus when you use our process that we have inside of Five Figure Freedom, we literally embed handling objections, answering your clients' questions, making sure that they pay after the sales call is over. We literally embed that in the process itself. And so when you do our signature process, triage, treatment plan, tell the offer, that will automatically overcome objections. That will automatically make sure that people pay after the invoice. That will automatically clean up your sales calls. So make sure that you look at that podcast episode or that YouTube video. Make sure you look at that YouTube video first if you haven't already. Let's dive into the 7 top reasons why you're doing sales calls, but they're not converting. So reason number 1 is your sales calls are too short. So I see so many people doing quick 30-minute or 15-minute sales calls, and that's just way too short. You want to make sure that you book out an hour. Yes, an hour. And here's the reason why I want you to book out an hour. Number 1, you're going to get market research. So you are going to get super clear on your ideal client and you're going to have content ideas and you're going to be able to overcome objections because you know your ideal client so well because you spent that time with them. So number 1, it's within your benefit. But number 2, you never want the client to feel rushed. On the receiving end, when I'm trying to buy something, I always feel rushed with just a 20-minute sales call or a 30-minute sales call. How possibly could I articulate all of the peaks and valleys and the goods and the bads and what exactly I need in just a 30-minute sales call? So the sales call is not a place where you just say, hey, so what are your quick questions? And hey, this is here just to touch base and see if you're a good fit. No, you want to make sure, like I was saying earlier, that you actually are walking people through a process. So when you are doing our triage method, where you're getting to the root of your ideal client's problems and desires, that's going to take at least 20 or 30 minutes within itself. And so you want to make sure you have an hour, so around the 20 to 30 minute mark, that you're doing your treatment plan and that you're telling your ideal client about the offer. And then they're going to need at least 15 minutes to overcome objections or to ask their questions or to bring any other concerns up. So trust me, you will fill the whole time. It was funny, I was reviewing some of my client sales calls inside of Five Figure Freedom, and I opened up the video and I immediately saw that it was 30 minutes. I said, this is the reason why you didn't close the client. Before I even clicked play to review it, this was the reason why you didn't close. And I said, there's no way you could have gotten the information that you needed in order to close the sales call in this short amount of time. So I reviewed the rest of the sales call, and around the 10-15 minute mark, I could see my student talking to her client, transitioning the call and like starting to okay, like picking up the pace. All right, we got to wrap this up. But I could tell that the client had more to say. And I said, do you see that right here? The client wanted to keep talking about their problems. They don't want to know about the offer that soon. And you rush them to the offer. And then that's why you didn't close that client. So you want to make sure, and you just want to have the energy that you have all the time in the world. And again, you're going to get something out of it. You're going to get all this market research and all this data, but also you're going to get a paid invoice. You're going to get a paid client by the end of it. I would rather you do 5 60-minute sales calls and then you make $5,000 per, and then you make $25,000 versus you do 5 30-minute calls and only 2 of them convert and you only make $10,000. And so I would rather you make $25,000 versus $10,000 because you actually did an hour-long sales call. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, and one of the most common reasons why people do not close their sales calls, is they're putting their frameworks in their sales calls. And so especially if you're a coach or you're a consultant, you are likely putting all all of this information into a portal or a process for your ideal client, and they don't want that process. They don't want your modules. They don't want your videos. They don't want any of that. They could care less. And it's for the same reasons that I was talking about on the first part of this series. It's for the same reason that people don't like being fit into a formula. They don't like being fit into a video or having to go through things that they necessarily didn't want to go through. They don't want that type of information in the sales call. Once they enroll and once they see all those videos, they're going to be so happy, right? Once they actually get inside of the program. But when they're making a buying decision, they only care about their specific problem. I remember when I was reviewing another client sales call and they were a money coach and the client was just talking about debt. They were just talking about debt, how they want to get out of debt, how they want to be able to support their family better, and that they just wanted to get out of debt. So then when it came time to actually tell the offer, here my client went talking about his framework and all the things within his modules. And I was just saying and like shaking my head, I was reviewing the sales call. I was like, no, like, no. And they were talking about investing and budgeting and all of these things. And you could literally see the person on the sales call, it went all over their head. It went all over their head. And they said, okay, great. So will you talk about my debt? Like, will you talk about debt? Will we be able to solve that? And my client was like, yeah, we'll talk about that. And then we'll also talk about real estate. And then we'll talk about investing. And my client thought that they were over delivering while talking about this full blown framework that's so comprehensive. But the only way it communicates on a sales call is, oh, I don't care about any of that. I'm not going to pay money for things that I don't want. I'm not going to pay money for things that I don't need. So that's why it's so important to not talk about anything that the client has not mentioned. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like, oh yeah, you want to make sure that you oversell and that you put all these things in and that they're really getting their money's worth. But that's not what the client asks for. You only want to give a sales call for the things that the client has asked for. It is so important. So do not mention your frameworks or step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, do not mention any of that when you're on a sales call. Only stick to what the client has actually said. Another way of looking at this is every sales call should be different. Every sales call should be different. The client is going to say different things on every single sales call. If your sales calls are starting to feel repetitive, or if you're starting to feel like cookie cutter or copy and paste, that means that you are not getting specific enough on your sales calls. I have had my same offers, 5-figure freedom and 6-figure liberation, for 5 years at this point, like a really long time, 4 or 5 years. And I still have unique sales calls every time I do it. Even though I'm the same, the offer the same, my sales calls are completely different because I get so specific on what the client wants. So that's number 2, which is to not put your frameworks in. Number 3, the third reason why people do not close their sales calls is something called peacocking. And so peacocking is where you showcase your feathers, how big and bright they are and how amazing you look. You showcase your feathers and you basically just talk about yourself on the sales call. Whenever we do sales calls, it's our inclination to try to oversell our clients, right? To be like, oh yeah, well, I was able to do this and I was able to do that and I have this and I have that and I have this certification, I have that certification and all of this stuff. And what it does on the sales call is it distracts it away from the client and you start talking about yourself. So I want you to think about on a sales call, there's only room for one person and it should be the buyer. There's only one room for a person on a sales call and it should be the buyer. It should not be you. And so when I get on a sales call and I have all these accolades myself, and I have all these certifications and I have awards and I've been in Forbes magazine and I've been able to make millions of dollars, none of that comes out on a sales call. I'm the most boring person ever on a sales call because I care a lot about my client and I need to understand my client the most. Like if there's any exchange on who needs to know who or who needs to connect with who, I need to know who my client is. I need to be connected to my client more than my client needs to know anything about me. And then it's a little bit of reverse psychology because if my client believes that I know them so well, I'm so connected to them, I know exactly how to solve their problem. If my client has that experience about me, they're automatically going to believe that I know exactly who they are. So you want to make sure that you're spending all of this time with your client and understanding them and not peacocking and not showing your pretty feathers. Another way I like to say this is you could peacock in your marketing. You could peacock on LinkedIn, peacock on Instagram, showcase yourself. Also, you could talk about your framework on social media, on in your marketing, in your emails. Peacock all you want there. But on a sales call, the client shines. The client is the person that gets all of the attention. And likely the client already knows you, right? They've already stalked you online. They've already looked at your profile. They already came prepared. They're not going to get on the phone with a complete and utter stranger, right? They probably already know all the amazing things that you've done. It's time to make it about your client. Another reason why you're not closing your sales calls is the lead is not qualified. So what is a lead? A lead is an ideal client who is ready to buy, and that is the person you're on a sales call with. So if you have an ideal client and they're on a sales call, you want to make sure that they are qualified, meaning that they are the best person to be on that sales call. So for me, when I'm selling my Mastermind Six-Figure Liberation, I have a $50,000 requirement. I do not want anybody getting on that sales call at $5,000, right? And so you want to make sure that the lead is qualified. If you're just starting out, then practically any client will do. You do not get to be picky if you are first starting out. So it is really important to sign anything that breathes when you're first starting out. Again, you want to make sure that they have the money, that you're not being unethical. I want to be clear. But for the most part, if they have the money, if they want to work with you, then you're going to sign them if you believe that you can help them and you have the skills and tools that you need to help them. That's one element of a qualified lead. The second element of a qualified lead is you want to make sure that they know that this is a sales call. So at the beginning of the call, I say, awesome, I'm so excited to talk with you. I'm so excited to chat with you. So just to let you know, this is a sales call for my upcoming paid program. I always let the lead know, hey, this is a sales call for my paid offer. Right? That I'm not giving you free coaching. I'm not here just to waste your time, that this is a sales call for my paid offer. You'll be surprised that sometimes people are like, oh, I thought this was just a free call, right? And so you want to make sure that you're not wasting their time and you're not wasting your own time by making sure that the lead is qualified. You also want to make sure that they know about your prices before you get on a sales call. So you can let your clients know of your prices beforehand. It doesn't have to be a surprise at the end of a call. And so many people say, well, wouldn't that deter them from booking one? No, I've seen within my programs that they get more sales calls now that people know the pricing. So when you're doing your sales call form, you can get really specific and really granular on what questions you ask. And we teach you what questions you should be asking on your sales call form inside of my 5-Figure Freedom program. You want to make sure that the lead is qualified. Now, when I say this, people get a little all over the place and they think to themselves, oh, so if I don't like the person, I don't have to work with them. And it's like, no, even if the person has a little bit of an interesting personality or they ask you some interesting questions, that doesn't mean that they're not qualified. You want to make sure that the lead qualifications are, can you help this person? And do they know the prices and that this is a paid sales call? That's it. So that's everything you need to know about making sure you're speaking to qualified leads. Okay, so the fifth reason why people don't close their sales calls is because they feel bad for even doing them. They feel like they're trying to get something from the client or they're trying to sign someone or make money, and they're putting all this pressure on the sales call. And then, of course, they're not going to close it from that energy. But if you listen to all of the things that I've said so far, sales calls are magical because you're focused so much on the client and not yourself. I want you to imagine meeting your favorite online person and getting a whole hour with them where you're dissecting the problem, getting clear on the solution, really feeling connected and hopeful that you can actually get your problem solved. That alone is life-changing for a client. Sales calls can genuinely change someone's trajectory of their problem. I remember I was doing a sales call for 6-Figure Liberation, and someone said to me on the sales call, Dielle, I don't know if I can hit my goals because I'm going through this big spiritual awakening and I am really overwhelmed with all the changes that I'm having internally. And I asked them, I said, well, what if you can have a spiritual awakening and grow your business at the same time? And it changed their view. It was actually my client, Quinette, who's been on my podcast before. It changed her whole view on spiritual awakenings, what she's capable in, what she's capable of in her business. It changed her whole life. Just the sales call before we even started the program, just the sales call. So sales calls can be life-changing for the ideal client. It's not something that's just mandatory to make money. They're a way for you to connect with somebody in your community, somebody who's been following you and has been looking at your content. They're a way for you to connect. They're a way for you to learn all about your ideal client and for you to really understand who they are. So you are not being a burden, or you're not just trying to get something or get someone out of someone by doing a sales call. You actually get to change their life. The sixth reason why people don't close their sales calls is because they get an objection and then they're offended at the ask. And so they get an objection on like, okay, well, what's different from you and another coach or consultant? And then they get all offended. Like, oh my God, if they had to ask me that question, then they're not my dream client. Then they're not this and they're not that. And I always say, do not be offended at the ask. You are still a stranger on the internet and you're charging $1,000, $10,000 for your offer. It's okay if they have questions. So instead of getting offended at the ask, I want you to lean in. So in that example, you could say, oh, tell me more about the other coaches that you're looking into, or who is your dream coach, or tell me what other experiences with coaches that you didn't like so that you don't repeat that experience. You can actually lean in and address their objection and address their question if you're not offended at the ask. If you're not offended at the ask. So it is so important to put your ego down and step into compassion when you're doing sales calls and when you're having sales conversations instead of getting offended. And I want you to think about when you're on a sales call, you want to be able to ask your questions freely. You want to be able to ask your questions no strings attached. So make sure you're giving that opportunity to someone else when you're doing a sales call. And then the last thing that I always say when it comes to sales calls and making sure that you close them is to always ask for what you need on the sales call. So I see so many times people are saying, I'm afraid to ask that question. I'm afraid to say this. I'm afraid to say that. You have to ask for what you need on the sales call, because if you don't have that information, you won't be able to effectively run a sales call. So I was speaking with one of my students inside of my programs, and she was also a business coach, and she was working with this product designer person, this person who designs products. She didn't know enough about her business or how her business was doing. So on the sales call, this product designer said, I don't know what my numbers are. I don't know how much I've made. I don't know. And so my client was just like, okay. And she just changed the subject on the sales call. And I was like, wait. Why didn't you ask her, okay, well then go pull up your bank account. Go pull up your Stripe account. Go pull up your PayPal account. I'll wait. Pull up your bank statements, pull up your tax numbers, right? And tell me the revenue from your tax form. I'll wait. You have to be bold on a sales call and ask for the information that you need, or you won't be able to address all of your ideal clients' questions. Okay, so here are the 7 ways that people bomb their sales calls, and hopefully this will help you catch some things that you're doing and help you convert on your next one. And so I'll see you inside of my free training where I'm breaking down more sales calls mistakes, and I will talk to you soon.